Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Alright, you called me on my shit last week. Yes, I wanted it to be a shorter episode, but there were so many more questions, and you made me feel guilty for not answering as many of them as possible. So, for those of you in the comment section for the previous video, I'm going to make this whole video a lightning round, which is really just key for me doing it all in one take. So it might still be I'm gonna go as fast as I can, okay? It's late, I'm not actually tired, I'm eating, I'm great this week. Everything's fantastic. I finally had a couple days to chill, relax, after getting a ton of things. I can't even tell you about some of the things that I've been working on yet, but there's fun little projects coming down the line, and I'm getting ready for the mental insanity that's gonna take place once November 19th rolls around. Wait till you see my setup for that. That's going to be the time. But seriously, I'm going to lightning round this whole video. So let's get started. Anyway, but of course, thank you to our sponsors over on Patreon. You support. There's no reason necessarily to be over there. All my content's free here on YouTube. I don't gate anything, but it's there because people asked for it years ago, and I leave it there because why not? Thank you to our patrons of darkness, Khuja, Janova, and Kurenai Oni, who've gone above and beyond with their support. And with that, let's see how long this video actually ends up being. All right, so I've gone through and clicked show more to a bunch before actually starting, so I can try to move through this, because literally the third comment says, I'm going to go through this one a bit quicker. It looks at video length, so that was a lie. All right, so the first one with the hashtag, well, all job changes coming in Endwalker from the job action trailer and coverage I've watched from the media tour. It seems like everything has consistent access to uptime skills, and that's a new design priority. Do you feel that way with your brief time? No, because I don't feel like we didn't have that before. But some jobs it's a bit more reactive, and some jobs it's a bit more proactive, like Black Mage. What we've seen is an increase of proactive movement tools as opposed to reactive movement tools. So that way there's some form of skill differential between very experienced players and less experienced players. And that we've been seeing more of expansion to expansion, but it's not necessarily free or automatically good mobility. It's just mobility that is up to the player to use properly. There's one here. Is there any way to tell the difference between a physical attack and a magic attack? No, but there should be. It's a huge complaint that myself and many others have had. There are third-party add-ons that allow people to do that, and it should be standard information in the game, in my opinion. Then we had recently started watching State of the Realm. Blows my mind how many little details you guys know. I first thought it said how little do you know, which to be fair would have been right true. Any tips on getting into the less pronounced lore? It's just kind of diving into it. I'd say if you want to dive into the lore, starting with YouTube videos to get a basis of people who have already kind of been there and understood it. And then now that you kind of have an idea of where to look or how this information is found, then you kind of just patch after patch, try to pay attention as you're playing through or replaying through certain things. The next one was changes to Cape Westwind. Yoshida teased them, got me thinking about releasing an ultimate of that trial. No. I think maybe the stat squish might make Cape Westwind a little less of a joke, but probably not by that significant of a margin. And I think that's good enough if Cape Westwind just isn't the 40-second joke that it is now. But no matter what, I don't ever imagine it going back to being a threat like it was, right at the beginning of Realm Reborn, when last 20% would actually kill people a fair portion of the time. Somebody said, can we have Fedora of the Realm? Please, if you haven't watched the most recent State of the Realm, you'll understand that joke if you haven't. Then we have one that I didn't click read more on here. Shadowbringers had the Amaro mount. Do you think that, how do you feel about job leveling getting rewarded the same tier as tank duty rewards? Do you think this will continue? Yeah, because if the tank rewards, you can commit to, a job or up to 4 and get multiple mounts through those means. Whereas with the all job one, you have to level every job, even if you don't like them. So I think it's a fair thing. If anything, I'm still surprised healers only have the level 30 Conjurer mount, and that they haven't gotten something more. But with Sage, I doubt they're going to be looking to do that. But it just seems uneven, because tanks and healers are both kind of Q disasters. You know what I mean? Then there was another one. Good start to your Mondays. Glad you enjoy it. Let's see. I appreciate the depth you went into each video in your media tour videos. Thank you. Question is Reaper's difficulty level, or where you think it might be. How low or high do you think the skill floor or ceiling is? So Reaper has a simultaneously low and high ceiling. Because so many of its skills are on the global cooldown, it means that it's kind of slower paced, easier to gauge what your next action needs to be, to find your pace and keep it. But also means a mistake is far more severe, because you're setting yourself back a whole GCD, which can set a lot of the job back. So it just depends. It's different aspects have different skill ceilings and skill floors, but I think most people will find it intuitive and easy to approach. It'll just be about that individual skill expression that comes with properly maintaining your GCDs, and that's something that's fairly normal. I think it'll just be a little bit smoother of a transition for people that are working on that high tier optimization. With monks having 0 OGCDs in their kit, do you think skill speed becomes more important for them to help machine gun out the GCDs? No, because you still have to consider timing. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if slightly more skill speed becomes popular, something leaning more towards 1.92 as opposed to 1.94 or 1.96, just because it gives you a little bit of comfort. But in terms of being important, no, because you're going to have to lose so much in the way of your other stats in order to really bump that number, that while it might be fun, it might be frantic, it's probably not efficient. So I'm going to say no. I still think some of the other stats are going to be really strong, are going to be too strong as they have been in pretty much every other expansion, and that you won't see skill speed monks outside of anything but a really funny video. Hint, hint. Let's see. Then we have one with La Brea here. Is it possible La Brea survived at the end of 3.0? I don't think so. I think I've always pondered that, but I've shifted into the idea of no, La Brea is probably gonzo. And I think that we're just looking at Pandemonium's artwork, going to be more dealing with the aftermath of the things that he architected when he was around in all those years, and even going all the way back to before the Keening. Let's see. Curious what your most epic gamer moment was? I don't know, dude. I shut so much of that stuff out because I looked back at myself when I was a younger guy, and I don't like to think back to those days, so if I did have an epic gamer moment, probably wouldn't have been that. But You're My Bitch Now for Uwu is probably up there all the same. If you haven't seen my Uwu clear, that's a pretty high tier epic gamer moment as far as I'm concerned. Gear sets prepared for leveling Sage. What are your thoughts on materia? I would throw grade, I think you have to throw grade 6 materia in the level 70 stuff. I would throw grade 6 stuff in the level 70 to 79 stuff, and then at 80, I would also throw materia into that stuff. But if you're sinking gear down, don't bother. As for what to actually meld, I would just go DPS stats more than anything else. Faster kills, faster leveling. We had a first-time question here. I was wondering if the trust system, being as new as it was, do you think they would level up all trust characters available? I don't think Endwalker's trust levels are going to have any sort of interaction or overlap with Shadowbringers. I think they're just going to start the new ones at 81. And they're going to completely ignore whatever your levels were in Shadowbringers because they don't want you to have to think about going back. Not to mention, some characters are going to be new jobs. There's new characters altogether. I don't think you have to worry about going back and touching your Shadowbringers ones. They'll just give you... Not to mention, there's story mode and avatar mode, and story mode will always be good. You'll never have to worry about their levels for story mode. Then we had here, why haven't we gotten a veteran reward since the Skull outfit? Because they realized that just adding more and more rewards based on time played was not an effective means of encouraging people to stay subbed. It got to the point where it was years and years and years you had to stay subbed to get a single reward. And it just wasn't smart. That's why they shifted over to achievement certificates. What I will say, though, is I found that since moving over, they have done insignificant work in regards of updating it. Yeah, there's a new thing here or there, but I find it to be very underwhelming. So I would like to see more frequent updates to rewards from achievement certificates, or things to reward longtime players outside of course, the content that we're actually playing. Then we had one here. As someone who has played 14 as long as you have, wondering what your thoughts are on how the science have grown and developed over the years. There's certain plot points that I feel like have gone a little too ignored. Ishtola and her sight is a big one. And while they've kept other ones kind of in the background or even in the foreground, I've enjoyed the characters evolving themselves, the events they've gone through. It clearly shapes the way that they feel about each other and the decisions that they make. And it's very fluid, almost so much that you only really notice it when you look at stark differences like how they are in 2.0 and 3.0 and compare them into 5.0 and I'm sure into 6.0 as well. But they've done a really good job with most of the characters. There's only a few that I think have been largely, not even underwhelming, just whelming if anything like that. Another question about trusts. What class should I run to speed run through dungeons? So funny thing about trusts, the faster you go, the slower trusts actually DPS. And the slower you go as an individual, the faster the trust actually DPS. So they try to even out at about 30 minutes regardless of how fast you're actually going. That being said, I always found that Black Mage was among the fastest jobs to get through. I could get Malika's down to like 21 minutes. I got Katana down to 23. Holminster always took about 27. Don Meg 25 to 27. And then Gulg usually 27 to 29. I could go a little faster, but it was tougher than I wanted to be. Black Mage I actually found was one of the faster jobs just for the sheer amount of AoE that it could bring. Somebody said they never asked a question. They wanted to give it a shot. We'd like to see the same change made to the Raid Finder, made to the Duty Finder, involving making shield and pure healers be specific slots. No, only because most of the stuff in the Duty Finder is kind of easy. I think because most of the activities in the Duty Finder are not difficult activities, that it just makes the queues longer, and there's not a tangible enough benefit to doing it in there. And I don't think that, like, Double Scholar, yeah, it's a meme, but it's also not that bad in most of the things in the Duty Finder. So no, I don't think it's worth the longer queues, personally. What's the smallest change edition coming to Endwalker that you're most excited about? One little one, they're adding the ability for a fight to lock your enemy list. So if there's enemies that you really need to track, or the game feels like you really need to track, then they'll be locked to the enemy list regardless of whether or not something else is added to the party list as well. We need to see it in practice, but there's a lot of times where the party list is kind of not in the same order every time, and it confuses the heck out of me. And I'm hoping it leads to some consistency in that regard. Let's see. Was wondering what your thoughts are on the ship in the Endwalker title screen. I think that's our actual lunar whale. It's probably an old Amarat ship, if I had to guess. Whatever they use to get to the moon, whatever secrets the moon has. So that's what I'm suspecting. It's some really old Amaratian ship, probably being kept by the Sharlians right now. They probably know about it and have it in like Labyrinthos or something. But that's all I'm thinking, and I would love to see it used for other features in the future, such as going to the Dragon Star, the original Dragon Star, or going to wherever Omega is from, as another example. But I think that's what it is. It's an Amaratian ship that was used to go to the moon. Lore related to primals take on specific forms for a reason. So primals take on the form of whoever's summoning them. Basically, they use their imagination, whether it be through legends or scripture, even like maybe drawn pictures from like fairy tales and stuff in their culture. And it attempts to take that form. We see that when we're not very good at conjuring our thoughts in that way, that it leads to the very different ones that we see throughout Eden. But that's essentially what causes a primal to take on that form, is the people summoning them are creating an image of sorts that is then being used to sculpt the primal itself. Let's get some sleep. No, I'm doing good today. I'm doing good on sleep today. Because I've gotten most of the crazy stuff I needed to get done, and I've just got some fun stuff coming down the line. Is there going to be an auto dismount upon being attack added? I would like it as an option. I sometimes treat the game like it has it, and then I remember it doesn't, so I would definitely like that. Why is there no option to form a pre-made alliance raid? There is. You can. However, you have to have the full 24 people, or you cannot queue. You can't queue as like a partial. But yeah, you can. You can form a pre-made alliance raid. It's in the party finder as an option. Now, for world bosses, the reason why that doesn't work is because I think alliance raids are by default cross-world, and cross-world parties don't allow you to share credit on world bosses that belong to specific worlds. So that you probably won't ever see. But there are pre-mades for alliance raids that you can use for the party finder and for the duty finder itself. Huge fan of the Versus series. When do you think we'll see the Endwalker one? So last time I debated doing a full Versus series before 0.1, then doing a series patch by patch. I still always have that in my head. The workload is kind of high, and it means that the videos get outdated real quick, so it might be a little too bloated, but that's always kind of the idea. It just hasn't ever worked out in such a way that I think is efficient for the channel, but I'm always looking to try to do that. Any jobs that might have cursed openers? Red Mage is looking super cursed. Ninja, it depends on how you feel about Forked and Fleeting. Any bosses that have point blank AoEs or require you to get far away early on, it's a lot more cursed for them if it doesn't line up properly. Samurai, the most cursed thing I've seen is pre-pull Mechio, starting with a Madare. And honestly, that's not even that bad. It's just the idea of waiting the pull time for the pre-pull Mechio. Monk, same deal, pre-pull. Not Black Mage, not Summoner, not most other things, I think, don't really have cursed openers. It's really, those are the few big ones. And I'm trying to think, Dancer. I've seen Dancers say using improv before you standard step in your opener, so you have a shield, but that's just to get a damage shield for the first AoE, so that's not going to be worth it in the slightest. So yeah, the few that I named are really the few big ones, but we're kind of hoping that doesn't survive. When do you think the collector's edition will be shipped? You normally get it on release date or the day before release day. And I actually plan on making a video kind of along this vein of like when you can expect to actually get your codes or your physical editions or whatever. Because there's an important detail there in regards to your account and applying and making sure you have access to Endwalker that I think a lot of people are going to skim over because it's very unusual. How should I try playing 11 in 2021? Just to be ready to have the wiki open at all times. Literally, anytime you have a question about something, you have to wiki it for Final Fantasy XI. And honestly, you might need to go through 2 or 3 different wikis, the BG wiki, the FFXI-clopedia, and even sometimes the FFXI-AH forums need to be used. It's a lot of just trying to find information. And it is a time, but at least the story's good. And as long as you only play through to beat the story the first time, I think most people can still enjoy it. What are the chances the last Endwalker dungeon's 8 people? No, one you and 7 trusts maybe, but not 8 actual people. They're never going to go back to that because of how controversial Praetorium and Castrum were. They could. There's nothing that's really stopping them other than their own diswant of doing it. But they've explained that it's a mistake, and they even want Castrum and Prey to have like solo trust versions that they can do. But we just haven't seen that yet, so I wouldn't expect it to ever happen. More persistent options to our characters' default facial expressions. No, I don't think anyone's ever asked that, but I'm sure that somebody could if they had it in their head. So maybe someone will ask at some point, but I've never heard anyone ask a question like that. You think we'll get a story trailer with a lot of spoilers? So I think the spoilers from the Shadowbringers trailer were mixed because it gave us a big lore dump, but what that actually meant for the story was very unapparent. So I guess it depends on how sensitive you are to obtaining information as a spoiler versus the actual outcome of that. And yeah, now it has a lot more relevance, but it's after we've had that information for quite some time. So I do fully expect there to be a launch trailer on November 5th at the Live Letter, and I do fully expect there to be some major spoiler drop. I mean, they even had a shirt for it last time, if I recall. So yeah, I fully expect that. Question about deep dungeon field exploration, given that Bozja development was the reason we didn't get a deep dungeon. That is not true. The reason we didn't get a deep dungeon last time was because they thought it was boring and they shouldn't do it again. They basically just said, oh, we've done that twice, it's just the same old thing. Let's put the resources into something new. So they decided they didn't want to do it and then decided what to do with the resources. They didn't go, oh, well, we can do this or this, so I guess we'll just cancel that and do this instead. That being said, I am very much a proponent for what you've suggested here, some sort of crossover or overlap between deep dungeons and field exploration. I've been an advocate for it for several months now, but usually in videos like this where it's less obvious, like you'd have to have watched this video to know my opinion on it. I do have one deep dungeon video where I bring up the thought of it, but that's about it. So like the things you've suggested, like something like a Lost Action equivalent for Commanders, more balance towards deep dungeons. Yeah, I've thought of all of this, and I've thought that it's very, very reasonable with even a little more detail in mind. I had this weird comment. I ended up actually commenting on it. Someone said you should stick to Q&A info like this and running content in dungeons that assist players. I always went here first hoping you had completed a new dungeon. It always helped. The content you do with those other split-screen guys who mostly vegetate is scattered and confusing, and I don't watch anymore. So you mean the podcast? I'm not going to stop doing State of the Run. That's near... Actually, how many episodes is this? This is 366. That's 293. That's a good time. You should go into it more with an open mind. I'm not going to stop doing State of the Realm. That's not going to happen. Vegetate. You mean sit down and relax? That comment I thought was weird, so I wanted to call that one out. Question is regarding daily roulettes on November 19th. They reset in the morning. Curious if still the case on launch day. Yes. If you do your roulettes And even your Beast Tribe dailies, right? Anything that resets daily, if you do it before daily reset, you can do it again after daily reset on launch day. So Pixie Beast Tribes are going to be a popular one. Of course, daily roulettes are going to be a very popular one. And I'm trying to think if there's anything really major other than that, but those are probably the two biggest ones for people. Then there was a Stormblood question about how, do you think that people have kind of forced this perspective that Stormblood is weak? I'm replaying through Stormblood right now, and while there are parts of it I forgot that I actually really enjoyed. Some parts are funny, some parts are a good watch. I still don't. It's after playing through Shadowbringers, it is really tough to enjoy Stormblood, but I still really enjoy Heavensward. So I'm kind of in that boat. While there's a lot of important things that happen in Stormblood, I can't help but feel like there's something missing compared to the others. There's less of a soul, you know. So important stuff, cool, but that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be that it's a great expansion that people like undersell it or something like that. But everyone's got their own taste. I just prefer the other expansions over that. People asking for my alpha plushies, they're mine. No, my retainers, aka Square Enix, gave those to me. Feel the elite mindset that Hardcore Raiders have is good for the life of the game. It's a minority feeling that is not shared amongst most people, so it's neither harmful nor bad. Doesn't matter. I mean, I feel like I'm reading this question. You're concerning yourself too much with what other people think as opposed to just valuing your own opinion. I think that happens on the internet a lot. People feel the need to validate the way they feel by having other people feel the same way, when that really doesn't need to be the case. I mean, I come on these Q&As and I talk about games that I don't like, features I don't like. And I never feel like I need anyone in the stream to validate me, anyone in my YouTube channel to validate me. I just want to express that that's where I'm at, so people know kind of what's going through my mind. And so it's not about healthy or unhealthy, and the game is mostly catered towards casual players, people who aren't serious, who aren't hardcore. 99% of the game is catered to that. So if there are people who prefer that content and are vocal about that content, but you're not passionate about it, it's making sure to understand kind of where your interest circles lie, and not to worry so much about what somebody who doesn't share your interests feels about certain other things, because it just ends up not being majorly relevant to you. So I like to say, focus your energy on the things that have the most impact on how you enjoy the game, and not worry about how other people enjoy the game so much. Somebody said here that they don't think that people understand how much Sage will play like Scholar. You know, you're right. I do actually agree that I think a lot of people think they're vastly different. And I will tell you, as someone who has played Sage and Scholar, that I do think they play vastly different, but what they do is they accomplish very similar goals. It feels a lot different to use a Ketakole on Sage than it does to drop a Sacred Soil on a Scholar. Feels a lot different to go through your couple of damage skills on Sage, plus the extra GCDs that are a little stronger. You know, you have Phlegma and what's the other one? Toxicon. Like the reward slash gameplay structure, it feels very, very different towards Ether Flow and Fey Gauge and your Fairy and Seraph and stuff. So for me, I actually say that they feel very different, but at the core level accomplish the same thing. So at the end of the day, when you are really good at both, that feel is going to become the most important thing. And I don't think either of them are necessarily more beginner healer friendly, but Sage is actually Scholar, I think, might be more beginner healer friendly, thinking about it, because Sage has some great tools, but a lot of things I see newer players struggle with. I see a lot of new players struggle with HOTS, with heal over time skills, and using them effectively. New players really, really like to hard cast heals. For whatever reason, they just always want to top people up. And Sage is very much not about that. So I think Scholar might be the better one, but not by a wide margin. I think the Fairy just gives you a lot of leeway as a new player. I hope your day is going well. Choice of course. What do you think are the jobs with the highest skill ceiling? I don't like this question. Not that you've done anything wrong. I'm just saying I feel like we all feel very differently about what makes a job difficult. A lot of people will tell you Black Mage is insanely difficult, but it's not its rotation that's difficult. It's how proactive you need to be with the movement, with the execution, in order to be optimal with it. Some people find that Dancer is incredibly easy because they essentially just just have to do their dances, but some people are incredibly overwhelmed by the sheer amount of procs that you have to deal with and how to manage them and how to prioritize them. So I never am good at this question because I feel like we are really all different in that respect. For me personally, current summoner is just a bit much. It just gets my senses tingling in a way I don't like, but Endwalker summoner won't feel that way at all. And then there's just jobs I don't enjoy, but I don't necessarily feel like have a crazy high skill ceiling, like Dragoon. It's just not my flavor. So it's just a really tough question to answer efficiently. What are the rules for streaming new content? Just at your discretion, don't spoil people. I'm going to tell you now, I'm posting guides to dungeons. I'm posting guides to the extreme trials. And while I might make the thumbnail as spoiler free as possible, I'm going to A, update those thumbnails eventually to be, when it's more normal to see, to just be the dungeon or the boss or whatever it is. And I'm going to have names of stuff. Like, I'm going to avoid the exact boss names in a lot of cases for just, like, YouTube titles. Like, it might be the instance name or something. But I am 100% going to be posting videos that have technical spoilers by virtue of their name alone. So, it's just a matter of fact. It's just a matter of what people want to see and don't want to see, what they need to subscribe to, unsubscribe to, so that they are spoils or are not spoiled. Let's see. Do you think it's possible that seeing the planet from afar will reveal the full map to us? Possible. I hadn't thought about that, but that's a possibility. We'll see. Then we have another one. If Endwalker stays true to form, what do you think will be our weapon extreme and our accessory extreme? So it was what? Lakshmi was accessories and Susano was weapons. And then it was Innocence was accessories and Titania was weapons. So let's go with that. Whatever the 83 trial is, weapons, 87 trial, accessories. I'm hoping, as early as it would be in the story, that Anima is 83 and that Mage's sister / my prediction of Asura being the true incarnation of the three Mage's sisters as the 87 just be accessories. That's where my personal hopes lie. Do you think we'll ever have to rebuild Garlemald? Yoshi P's already started joking about it, so I have a feeling it's a joke / not joking thing, but probably not anytime soon. Curious, what are some guidelines to follow if you stream 14? I always say it's just courteous to hide your chat and not always play voice comms unless you have the permissions of people on there. Those aren't rules, but I feel like it's a good courtesy to have, because if you start if people are being toxic, or even if you just want to have a private conversation with somebody while you're creating the content, people just like privacy. Not everyone who you walk by in the game wants to be a part of your video or knows they're about to be a part of a video, and respecting that is important. Sometimes it's tough because, obviously if you're doing a dungeon and you have strangers in the dungeon, you might run into the issue where you're using they're part of your dungeon, they're part of your content, but that's like minimizing it as much as possible. Did they say if HQ fishing drops would be removed? I mean, they said all HQ gathering materials, so I'd assume but you're right, fishing would need to see significant changes in that case. We'll see. They'll talk more about it November 5th, so next week we'll have a better idea at the very least. Warriors don't have a UI that shows their damage up buff. Do you think it's a possibility you might see this on other tanks in the future? Yeah, now that you mention it, the damage up buff that Warrior has, it'd be nice if there was some visual to the gauge that actually had it. Not that it's tough to track, but I think it'd just be cool. So yeah, I think we'll see that a lot more. Anyone that does have a damage up that they apply to themselves, I don't think it would be too surprising. Do you think Reaper and Sage deserve 10 levels of class story? Yeah, I think they'll get it too. I'd be very surprised if they don't get it. At the very least, we know they have the first level, and I don't think they'll try to tell the whole story at one level, even with the way that story was done in Shadowbringers. Let's see. I don't understand the difference between world servers and data centers. So a data center is a cluster of servers. You can have, on an entry-level account, one character per server, but it doesn't matter how many servers are on that cluster. Like, you can make one on every single server that's on that data center. So if you want to make an alt that's on Primal, and let's say your character is on Behemoth, you could also make a character on Leviathan on an entry-level account. You just couldn't make a second character on Behemoth, is all that it is. And there shouldn't be any ping... Oh yeah, no, you don't have to make a character on an EU server. Do you know if Job Quest expansion will be a continuation of the last expansion or new ones? You mean the role quests? No, those are going to probably be entirely their own. There's even a whole new category of role quests for ranged physical. Before it was just physical DPS, both melee and ranged physical shared a category in Shadowbringers. In Endwalker, they have two separate categories, so no, they're probably not continuations at all. Is that a first-time question with the recent changes to Summoner? Do you think other jobs might get similar treatments? Only as necessary. Not everything needs to have its button load change to be like Machinist or Summoner, and some jobs will be better off for it, and some jobs won't be. Samurai, for example, I don't think would be nearly as good if they had a similar kit or a similar amount of buttons to something like the new Summoner. So I think occasionally you'll see this, especially as more jobs are released. But not to expect it for every single job. Even Reaper is, clearly very busy, even though it's new, and then Summoner was just updated to have, I guess, better button management, I suppose. Do you think encounter designs are going to change for all the new defensives and healing that, like, tanks got? No, I think it's just going to be a skill ceiling versus a skill floor thing. Players who are really good with those skills will get a lot of benefit out of it, and players who aren't but still use them, it kind of raises the skill floor, while also kind of, players who are already at the ceiling are just going to get a lot more benefits out of it. But I don't think we see drastic encounter changes or like damage increases to reflect that these things are the way that they are. As for Paladin, still has that 4 Holy Spirits in the Confiteor instead of 3. Yeah, I've heard Zeno saying that he thinks that he'll do all the Holy Spirits now because Holy Spirit's stronger than it was before. So I'm going to let the Paladins figure that one out. Then we had this one. During the comment on how you wish English content creators would provide Japanese subs, you seem receptive. Yeah, I had a quick discussion with an individual, and I started thinking about the logistics of it, and doing it, I'd have to do it for select videos. And I feel kind of bad. Because here's the thing. In my space, a lot of people are underappreciated, underpaid, or take on what I feel like jobs or responsibilities for drastically lower than they should be earning. I know that some people like to volunteer, some people just like to be a part of it, but I'm a very firm believer on fair and fair payment and fair recompense. That's not the right word. Compensation. There you go. For work that would, cost them, a good amount of money for the amount of time it takes in the real world. And I think long-term supporting that for every single video, considering how many I do, is unfeasible. So I've kind of been toying with seeing how I can do this, what's the most effective way for me to do this, and how I'm going to do it in the first place. So I have the idea, it's in my head, and I want to execute on it, but how I'm going to execute on it, how I'm going to make sure that I can do this, but also people are treated fairly, paid fairly, and that it makes sense from a YouTube, like a business standpoint even, and a payment standpoint even, for me to actually do it in the first place. So it's just a lot of logistics that I haven't worked out. I think we're getting close to the end here, finally. Do you think they'll ever explain why the Ascians have names based on the Scions of Light but bear glyphs from the Scions of Darkness? No, I think it's just all one giant reference, because they're not even specifically referring to Ivalice. In returns, like in our game, they're not specifically like playing to any Evolution character, Evolution lore, other than really Elidibus. So I don't think there's any connection actually between the Ascians and the Espers and the Lucavies or anything like that. I think it's just a neat little reference that they came up with very early on, because Zodiark itself was actually a reference to the Final Fantasy Evolution character. Every week you're tired. Why? So I actually am most tired on Sundays and Wednesdays on most weeks. I don't know why. My body just caves on those particular days. Doesn't matter if I like go for like a jog or I work out. I have my workout bench back there. Those days, like even if I just get the blood flowing, something just clicks on those days and I'm more tired. Today happens to not be the case, but it's been a weird week for me. So maybe that's why. I don't know why, but I'm okay this week. So I guess we'll just count our blessings on that front. Then there's a really long question about Endwalker Scholar. I'm probably not qualified, but it largely just seems to be how most people are probably going to energy drain now more than they were before, because you won't clip your GCD anymore with energy drain and broil. And that's deliberate because they took the MP power off of energy drain, so that if you actually want to be MP efficient with your ether flow, you A, have to make sure they're all spent before you press ether flow again, but B, you need to consider if you're actually saving yourself a heal by using that energy drain. Like, do you need the heal that energy drain is replacing using an Indom or using an XCOG or something like that? And they heavily want you to consider that, because there is no MP return on energy drain anymore in Endwalker. We'll see if that trade ends up working out compared to before, or if it ends up being a gain to still use it on other things. That being said, for some things, for easier content, I mean, it's always been an energy drain spammer anyway, if you can, so it'll probably still be that way. I don't see that really changing much. Are there any changes you'd really hope to see, Scholar, we aren't getting? I still don't know really how receptive the pets are. I also wanted more Fey gauge spenders, and instead there's less, which I thought was kind of weird, because I thought they needed to make it more involved and not less involved, and now it's just a tether gauge. But I mean, I guess now I know I'll just always use it on tether, even if I don't need to. Which version of 4 should I play, 3D Remake or Pixel Remaster? I think the Pixel Remaster of 4 is better than the 3D Remake, but I find the kind of campy audio and just general cadence of the 3D Remake of 4. It's better than the Final Fantasy 3 3D Remake by a fucking mile. It's more difficult also, which I think is really nice, because Final Fantasy 4 across all other versions is one of the easiest Final Fantasy games. So if you want challenge and voice acting, play the 3D version. It's not bad, it's just not my personal favorite. If you want Final Fantasy 4 just kind of as an enjoyable, kind of laid back experience to enjoy the story and to enjoy the world but still get to interact with all the RPG elements, then the 2D versions, Pixel Remake in particular, is a really solid option. The new terms of service, how is any of this bannable? In case you missed it, 90%, over 90% of the terms of service hasn't changed. It's the exact same it's always been. It's really only the RMT and Party Finder related stuff and the penalty point degradation system that were new. So they've given examples for a lot of other stuff to tie up some loopholes, but realistically it's the same as it always has been. So just don't be a dick, and odds are you won't be banned. Don't take those examples all too literally. Let's see. Wondering story behind you came the name Mr. Happy. It has to do with Spanish homework. It's just they asked me to say Mr. Happy Monkey, which is Señor Feliz Mono, and then I just took the Mr. Happy part and I just made it that simple. Secondly, I can't remember anything you've mentioned. What are your thoughts on the combat in 14? Generally starting to slowly move away from dots. I'm glad that dots are not being used as an arbitrary job management or gameplay management system. That's why they existed before, because they're like, oh, we need to give you something to manage all the time. Now they're only really trying to use them if there's a reason to have them as part of a kit or as part of a specific attack, whether it be your AoE, or they're making sure that it doesn't feel tacked on to jobs. And they haven't nailed it entirely yet, but they're pretty close to that. So we may see more dot focused jobs in the future, but I'm glad they're not just using it arbitrarily like they did in the past. Then there was here, link to Sly's YouTube channel. Somebody linked that. Somebody said, do you think the game will ever come to Xbox? They keep saying it's always possible. It's not like they don't want to do it. It just hasn't happened yet. And then there's just the last few comments are here. 12 is in my top is probably the most painful thing I've heard today. Only Zodiac Age. Original 12 is nowhere near my top. Somebody got really upset that I didn't like the nickname thing last week. And I'm like, yo, listen. If somebody just says they don't like something and you bitch and moan about them not liking something, you gotta focus that energy somewhere else, all right? So if somebody doesn't like something, it doesn't matter if it's a good gesture. It's like you don't know that person like that. It's just kind of weird when people take massive offense. Like, it's kind of like the exact same thing they're saying is over the top. Like, you're like, oh, I can read the comment. It's a way to get bent out of shape over a friendly and well-intentioned hello. It's like, yeah, but being well-intentioned doesn't mean, and this is just a general humanity check, being well-intentioned doesn't mean that it has to be well-received. People just don't like certain things, and getting bent out of shape over somebody not liking the way you presented a hello or something is not that unusual. So, I don't know. It's just always weird to me that people, like, I have terrible social anxiety. I'm terrible at reading the room. But at least I got, like, basic concepts like this over my life. So at times like this, I'm kind of grateful that I picked up what I have, because you'll never hear me saying something like that. But it was the saltiest comment I saw, and I thought it'd be good fun to share it with you guys. But anyway, I think I got every question, and I did it all in one take, so I'm going to wrap this video up. What did I do? 38 minutes. Shorter than last week, but not shorter. Stop asking so many questions and this won't happen. That's as fast as that video was going to be. So I think we made good time. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and ask your questions for next week's episode in the comment section of the video below. And thank you again to our patrons over on Patreon. Thank you to all of you for watching, asking your questions, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay? Until then, take care.